All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things Supercross as they head into a mid-season break for a week. Obviously, firstly, thank you all for listening and supporting the site. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsor for this episode in Fly Racing, who have jumped on board for the 2025 season. Fly Racing is aimed to provide customers with the very best in off-road performance products, led by the revolutionary Formula S Smart Helmet. Fly Racing continues to push innovation in safety to new levels. Never before has style and technology blended together so seamlessly as the 2025 Fly Racing lineup. For more info, check out flyracing.com or your local Western Powersports dealer. Follow Fly Racing Global on social media and cheer for all their athletes in the SMX World Championships and in MXGP. Obviously, welcome JT. How's life? And thanks for joining us again. You're in Spain, mate. The brutal schedule continues and the weather's not looking too good.
Yeah, I'm in Spain. I mean, for anybody who's traveled internationally, you know what that's like. So, yeah, fly to the hub in the U.S., then across the Atlantic to Paris, then wait there, then fly to Madrid, then get the rental car, then drive a little over 2 hours from there. So it's it's a little bit of a marathon trip, but I mean, honestly, I couldn't have gone any smoother. So I'm thankful for that. Everything was on time. I had no issues whatsoever. So I'll count my blessings. And yeah, other than some really terrible weather that we're having at the moment, yeah, things are going well. I'm happy to be here. Other than I feel like I'm going to be walking around in the mud all weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. We'll wait to see it all unfold, mate, and hopefully the weather is on your side and the racing is maybe it's similar to Argentina where there's a bit of a mixture of conditions would be ideal. We'd be taking that at this point. But I guess onto the American scene now, mate. How does this off week look for a lot of guys? Obviously, many will be approaching it differently. It's a chance to rest, reset, do some outdoor testing, keep fine-tuning the Supercross testing, but usually there's a lot of grinding still going on, isn't there, mate? It's not like it's a full time off, have a break and all that. It's a tough balance to obviously work because you need some rest because it's been a very demanding start to the season, and you know that too, covering it all as well. But you kind of, if you sort of rest too much, you get that feeling you might be losing out while others are putting in the work. So a lot of guys need to heal up, obviously, but how would you approach it? It's a tough one, isn't it, to balance what you want to do?
Yeah, it's everybody looks at it a little bit differently. Some guys will use it to get some testing in. I think for outdoors, it's a great opportunity to spend a couple of days and get a preliminary setting in place without any real pressure. So a lot of guys will use it for that, which I do think it's a great opportunity for that. I think the first week, most guys just kind of keep the hammer down. They train as if a normal week. They don't really take any time off. The weekend is really when they get to take a breather for a minute and actually rest. And so that's what I would recommend if I was coaching anybody is, hey, do your normal thing during the week. And then Saturday and Sunday, you're just completely off. Like if you want to pedal your bicycle a little bit, sure, but use this time to recover and actually like see your family and take a breather, sleep in on the weekend. And then because the following week, you're right back into race week routine, and it's not a bad thing. It's just they go right back to the normal routine of a race week. And for racers, routine is everything. You don't want to switch a whole lot up. You want your body to expect and know exactly what's going on. And so it can have some sort of expectation of what's coming. That's a really underrated thing. And, racers are creatures of habit, but it's a good thing. Like they do that because it's comfortable, but also your body creates a rhythm. So when race day comes, your body is expecting, like it knows exactly what's about to happen and it's ready to execute the game plan. So, yeah, I think, that's probably the MO. You saw a lot of guys, like you saw Cooper Webb and Hayden Deegan, those guys riding motocross this week, get some time in where there's really no pressure, get a base setting, just work the bugs out a little bit. And then next week will be business as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you look back at the showdown, really cool. On your industry seating podcast, you mentioned, should they do a Triple Crown showdown? It'd be pretty awesome for the fans, spectators, for everyone watching, the viewers. I don't know if you got around to asking the bosses that. Obviously, you mentioned they had a fair bit going on with the Blair situation, but you look at it, it would be awesome, wouldn't it? 10 riders from the east made it, 12 from the west into the main event. So always throws a good curveball. It's something exciting. There's a couple more to come, and they can be big game changers, like you mentioned last year with RJ. There's epic battles that you don't see every week, and it's just crazy. It could have even been more stacked if there wasn't so many 250 guys injured. So just your thoughts on the showdown, and do we get triple crowns into them too?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm going to ask. It was it was not the right weekend to bring that up last week, and they were dealing with a lot more bigger issues than my scheduling questions. Let's just say that. But yeah, I want to bring it up, and I'm sure they've thought of it. I mean, these guys think of everything, right? When they have to build these schedules, I'm sure they've talked about it. I would just love to know if that's ever even a consideration. Can we ever do it? Will they? That would be. I think it would be super fun. So I did not bring that up, but yeah, would be super cool.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And just your take on Indy as well. Obviously, the track, how was it from your perspective? You do those reports from down there regularly, mate. They're super tough ruts, jump faces. It was pretty gnarly for all. A lot of it was about survival, a lot of dudes were saying. So I think a lot of guys will have earned the off week after that one. But just how difficult is that kind of a track by that 450 main where things certainly aren't easy, mate? And Cooper Webb just handled it masterfully, didn't he?
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Like the funny thing, so I walked the track and I did a report for SMX Insider show, the post race Insider show, standing in the ruts, and it was pretty brutal. No question about it. Track was really beat up. But I'll be honest with you. When I walk out, I talk to riders and they're like, "Man, it's so bad. It's so bad." And then I walk it, and it is bad. Don't get me wrong. There's no doubt about whether the track is rough and ruddy and deteriorated. All those things are true. And when I say this, I know it's going to come off as like, well, back in my day, and I don't want it to be that. But track prep has come so far, and they do such a great job of fixing the racetrack and prepping it in between races and making sure that it's better. Like they went out in between main events and fixed all the jumps and all the trouble spots that could get riders hurt. They fixed all that stuff. Like they just do such a fantastic job now. We didn't have any of that when I was racing. I mean, the track was just hammered all night. And, I know that they had less equipment and it was just a different time back then. There were times when guys in the 450 main, which was 250 back then, weren't jumping the triple late in the race. Think about that if a track was that ready now where guys couldn't jump the triple. There was one race, I mentioned this on the Pulp Show, 1996 on Media Day on Friday. Jeremy McGrath, who had, he won 15 out of 16 races that year, had to roll all three jumps of the triple. He couldn't even double the triple because it was so ruddy in Atlanta. And you just don't see that stuff anymore. So I really try to caution myself against like saying like, this isn't that bad. You guys don't even, like, I don't want to be that guy. But man, I think people would truly be astonished at how brutal the racetracks were like late 90s. They've gotten better since then, but like I remember Indy, Minneapolis, Pontiac, those tracks were about as bad as you could ever possibly get. We were jumping out of ruts, landing in ruts, rolling through ruts and corners, just as bad as it gets. So I am probably not the best person to really play up how brutal the racetracks are because I look at it and I'm like, yeah, it's bad, but this is about 40% as bad as I've seen in my day of racing. And that doesn't make me tough or anything. It's just what I was exposed to. That's all. That's all that it means. It doesn't mean these guys aren't amazing. They would be much better on that track than I was. Like all those things are true. I think if we had a time machine and we could go back onto like a 1997 Indianapolis track or any of those years, I think people would be mind blown at how bad the racetracks were back then.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to see, mate. Just quickly, who would you give the edge to in both classes if the tracks were like these days? It'd probably be your Webbs and your Roxons and your Tomacs still, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the slower the racetrack is, the better it is for Cooper Webb. And so that's a pretty cut and dry answer. He is so good at finding efficiencies. I guess he's good at finding efficiency in the inefficiencies as the track deteriorates. He will shorten it up. He knows that when the track gets rougher, you don't have to go as fast around it. You can just find the quickest way around and put pieces of the track together. It's not like it's, I think a lot of Supercross now, these guys are so damn impressive at just, they're visually going so fast. When the track breaks down, none of that matters anymore. You can't do any of that. Like, you can't go that fast. So it's about finding what's the quickest way to get through this, minefield of a racetrack. So it's just a different style of racing. And I think that's why you see Coop struggle a little bit more out west historically, is because that's not his strength. If the racetrack's perfect and you just have to drop the hammer, it's not that he's not good at it. You don't win Supercross championships by not being good at it. It's just not where he shines. So when you see a track that's as bad as Indy was, like it's on the higher end of deteriorated racetracks that we have nowadays, and he won by whatever 10 seconds or 15 seconds. That's why you get a win like that, is because that's what he does well, and he's doing everything well. But you give him his perfect setup with a hole shot, yeah, good luck.
Yeah, he's just a master at just, exploiting others' weaknesses and maximizing his strengths. And I guess he did that on the weekend. Wasn't the best start to the day for him, but, really once he hit that main event, fastest lap, so good when he gets the start and he's in control. He doesn't have to fight through the pack. And obviously the kit was really cool too, mate, for a great cause. Fly did as well. But a few words on that, and just Coop putting another flex on, extending that championship lead to 15 points now. Chase will be definitely happy to get a podium, but it wasn't a good night again for him. So he'll be definitely doing some resetting with this break as well. But yeah, Webb's looking like the man to beat, but things can change quickly in this sport, like we've seen with Prado, Jet, Tomac. Injuries just around the corner. So managing yourself and just keeping that risk, you can never really avoid it, mate, every time you jump on a bike. But Webb's certainly in prime position, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I mean, nothing's set in stone, and he is. He's very aware of that. Like, he would be the first one to tell you that one first turn crash, one big mistake, one mechanical failure could erase my 15-point lead in a heartbeat. And he's just been there and done it. He knows better than to assume anything. But in the same breath, would you rather be in his spot or anybody else's? Well, the answer is be in his. So what more can you do than that? Unless you're going to give him like 150-point lead where he's mathematically won the title already, you got to be happy with how it's going, and that every weekend's a new opportunity to improve your lead or lose. That's just what racing is, and you assume risk, and everyone else has the same risk. Just because Webb could crash, hurt himself, DNF, and lose the point lead, so could Sexton and so could Roxon. That same thing could happen, and the lead could get blown to 40 points at the next round just as easily. So you just take it for what it is. I've been in that spot, much less, impactful, but like my German championships, I remember, the penultimate round would be in Munich every year, and it would be the weekend before Christmas. And then you would go home for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and you'd come back for Dortmund, and you're practicing, training hard at it, trying to get ready for the Supercross series in the US. Plus, you would typically race the first round. Sometimes it would be on the weekend of the first round, sometimes not. But there was a lot of risk. Like, I could have hurt myself. I could have gotten hurt at Anaheim, anything. But you just have to keep your head down and keep going. And that final round, you go in with the points lead, you don't qualify or do something silly, that lead can be gone in an instant. So I know that feeling. You could say it's not on the same level, which is fair, but the emotion is the same, and you just accept it. You just know that there's nothing you can do about it, and backing off is not going to help anything. You just keep your head down, and really, I'll tell you what the strategy really is: staying out of bad situations, or staying out of situations where the risk of it going poorly goes higher. So what do I mean by that? I mean, getting bad starts, getting into tit for tat stuff with guys like Barsha or Anderson, where these guys have nothing to lose. So them cleaning you out means nothing to them, but it means everything to you. So it's those types of things you just are more mindful of. You really focus on the starts. You don't like, especially as you get closer to the end of the series, you really think about your gate pick. Like maybe you go a little bit more inside than you would want to prior, because there's just, if you crash, you just fall over on the inside. If you're on the outside and you get in a pileup, it's typically a lot bigger and a lot worse because momentum flows outside always. So it's little things, like nuanced stuff that you can do. But more than anything, it's just racing, and you just hope that, things go the way they've been going. But I think to your point, you have to like his odds. It just seems like it's going his direction.
Yeah, it sure does. And your take on Sexton again, mate. Obviously, you mentioned on your podcast, was he suffering a bit from that crash at Daytona? How much was that hindering him? Did you get any confirmation on that? And he just needs to sort of just have a big refresh, recalibrate. And like you said, in perspective, things are great for him. He's making good money. He's not injured too badly. He's so hard on himself though, isn't he, mate? And he just lets that negativity seep in, you feel so. And obviously, as he got confidence issues with the bike, you probably wouldn't think so anyway, like last year, given how fast he can go when he's on. So, yeah, another one with the bike setup can play demons in your mind as well. But Chase, we want to see him succeed, and just hopefully he's just given himself a breather and he'll come out swinging.
Yeah, like as usual with Chase, I think all this stuff is mental. Is he feeling the effects of the crash in Daytona? Probably. That's fair. I would say that was played a role in the late moto struggle. Like I think he was. I think he hit his head. Not saying he was concussed, but I think he hit his head, and I think he was feeling the effects of that in Daytona. That's just my opinion. I don't have any medical proof to back that up, but that's just what I believe. And for Indy, he was fine. It just wasn't quite good enough to catch Webb. He was really good. He was really fast, but he wasn't good enough to catch him. And then he just made a silly mental mistake in the sand. That's all you can really point to there, because at that point in the race, he was like 8 seconds down. He wasn't going to catch him. He knew it. I knew it. Webb knew it. Everybody that has been around racing for long enough knew it. Like the battle was going on when it was like 3 seconds. And then Webb, like air quotes around, broke him, and it dropped to 8. And then it's kind of over at that point. Like as a racer, I know I've been in that spot, I don't know if he would admit it in the moment, but deep down he knew, it's like, well, I'm not going to get him. Like I couldn't hold it. He got the gap now. I can't close at all, let alone, he's not even pushing anymore. There's a lot of mental signaling going on there when that break happens and you get it out to like 8 seconds. Like Coop's like, okay, I got him. And Chase is like, damn it, I'm going to have to take second. It's just what it is now. And then when he falls in the sand, that's just a mental lapse in concentration. And we've seen that so many times from him now that I really believe that it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. Like he starts thinking about, am I going to screw up? I can't screw up again. I don't want to screw up. I can't make a mistake. And then, he's not thinking about what he's doing. He's thinking about not making a mistake, which for somebody as talented and skilled as him, he doesn't have to think of it. He just should be just riding instinctually. Like you can take off. Like in that moment, he should be able to back it down a couple of percent and just cruise to the finish. Justin Cooper wasn't going to catch him. He knew he wasn't going to catch Cooper Webb. So he could take his time and be patient and not rush things and bring home a second there. That's just a part of racing. Look at anybody in history, like all the champions, they've had to do that at times. They're just like, I'm not going to win tonight, but I can't screw up here. I can't crash. So I'm just going to take it easy, not press, not push the front, not take any risk, and I'll just get second. And something is going on mentally with him where he is not staying in the moment. And I don't have the right vocabulary to really describe it, but he is losing like his engagement with the moment. And it just takes a split second. 1 split second, the front tire pushes when you're not paying attention. And all that's happening is when I say he like is losing engagement for a second, he can be not sliding forward on the seat. to make sure that you have pressure on the front tire. All these little nuanced stuff about racing, if you don't do it, going the speeds they're going, you can just fall over really quickly. It doesn't take a lot. It's a silly mistake for him, but if your mind is fixated on something else, which I believe it is, I think he's getting distracted by his own thoughts and his own worries of I'm going to lose and I'm going to lose more points and I'm letting people down and all that. That's what I believe is going on in his head in those moments. And you can look at James Stewart years ago. He used to have the same problem. He'd be going along fine, and all of a sudden he would just lose the front end somewhere, and you're like, what the hell? And I believe, and again, this could get me in trouble, but I believe that's why he went and he got tested for ADHD, and that's why he was taking the Adderall, right? He didn't get the TUE, and we all know, but like he was told by a doctor, you need to take this. And I think that's why is he was losing concentration. Like that lapse in concentration for just a split second can put you on the ground. And I'm not saying that that's the exact same thing that's happening with Sexton, but I think it's similar where something is interrupting his train of thought. And before he knows it, he's laying on the ground.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I always enjoy listening to your thoughts on it. It's you see him week in, week out. You've had seen the tough moments, and like you said, it is such fine margins between success and failure at that level. So hopefully we see the best of him in the second half of the season. And just the last one, mate, on Roxon. It was a strange one for him. Obviously had epic speed, qualified P1, was looking like he was well on track for another podium at least. And yeah, it just didn't quite happen for him. Couldn't get through the field. Got stuck back there, a bit hard to pass in certain sections. But yeah, 26 points back. He's probably just still in it. But I guess some of the open stadiums coming up, the mutters could be on the card. So that might be a leveler for Kenny and a lot of other guys to get back into it and to get some great results.
Yeah, it's we do have those 4 in a row, and that's, I think, on the schedule for everybody. They have to be ready for it. And when you look at Webb, he's not the best mud rider in the world. Like that is not his strength. And Sexton has been really good. I would argue in 2023 at the New Jersey round, which is basically New York City, if Barsha hadn't brake checked Sexton, he would have won that mud race. Like Sexton was ripping in the mud. So something like that, imagine if we had 2 or 3 mud races in a row, and that sounds crazy, but it's really not. If for those who are familiar with spring weather in the Northeast, it rains all the time. So it wouldn't shock me for a second that we had multiple mud races in April, that not even for a split second. I mean, that's not even counting Seattle. Everybody who's ever watched racing knows what Seattle can bring. So there is a lot of potential volatility in the results coming. And I'm sure Webb is, you can't stress about something you don't even know is going to happen, but I'm sure he's mindful of it because it could get really iffy really quickly as far as weather goes.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see. And obviously, lastly, just your words on Colt Nichols being on the Pat McAfee show in the fly gear, mate, riding the bike. It's a big deal for him in the sport. Very cool sort of thing to get more eyeballs on Supercross and Motocross. And he gave a really good account of himself too. Colt, he's a great asset and an ambassador for the sport like that. So I guess it just puts it on the map to the masses, the sport, doesn't it, mate? So your take on it?
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm a big fan of Pat McAfee. I think when you're talking about people who have camera presence, and people who are listening to this outside of the U.S. may not know, but this guy has it. He is incredible at what he does on multiple platforms, multiple shows. If I could ever have 10% of the talent he has for engaging an audience, it's truly unbelievable. So I'm a fan of him, and I would have loved to gone to his show. You think about this guy; he was a NFL player, and he starts his own show in Indianapolis where he played. His studio is in like an old church. They just bought this old church building and turned it into a studio. Well, he has parlayed that into a $85 million deal with ESPN. Like that's just, self-made. Like the guy is just incredible at what he does. So huge moment for the sport to get him, and huge moment for fly racing to have him in fly racing apparel on the weekend. Like it was just a win all the way around for everybody involved. So super cool, both on a personal and just on a level as a fan.
Yeah, well said, mate. Really awesome stuff. But yeah, obviously, before we wrap this one up, massive thanks to Fly Racing for sponsoring this one. Check out flyracing.com, your local power sports dealer, and obviously flyracing.global on social media, and be cheering on all their athletes. Thanks again for taking the time, JT. All the best, and we'll catch up next week.
All right. Thanks, Ed. Talk to everybody soon.